Hello and welcome to News Central Now. I am Adebola Adedugba. The top stories are this hour. Supreme Court of Nigeria reserves judgment on Kogi election dispute. Nigeria's ex-lawmaker says senators 29 million naira earning, not a lot of money. Kenya plans to reinstate some taxes to raise $1.2 billion. Details shortly. The Supreme Court of Nigeria on Monday reserved judgments in an appeal filed against Tribunal and appeal court judgment by candidates of Socio-Democratic Party Murtala Ajaka on Kogi governorship election. Now, the Apex Court had earlier declined Ajaka's counsel, Pius Akubu's request for constitution of a full panel to hear and determine his appeal. Akubu argued that the 5-member panel presently constituted should be increased to 7 justices. Lawyer to the respondent, however, kicked against the application and urged the court to proceed with hearing. The presiding judge, Justice Adebola, held that election appeals are time-bound and that the courts constituted as a 5-member panel had jurisdiction to determine the appeal as presented. Justice Lawal therefore reserved judgment to a date that will be communicated to the parties. Few queues have resurfaced in several parts of Lagos. A scarcity of petroleum hit Nigeria's commercial center. Now, in some areas of the state, motorists were spotted in the queues that snaked into the streets, causing gridlock around filling stations. A litre of the product now sells for between 800 and 1,000 naira in some filling stations, a move that has resulted in an increase in the pump price of fuel. Some filling stations are not selling the product, while black marketers have taken advantage of the situation to do brisk businesses. However, the federal government, through the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, threatened to withdraw licenses of filling stations hoarding fuel. Earlier, News Center's Abuja Bureau Chief Amadin Oyi spoke to us on the situation of things in the FCT.
Sometime last week, saying they have enough product. They blamed the end governance protest that marketers were not loading from the fuel depots. But the question many people are asking is that it's 9 days after the end governance protest, and the product is still scarce. There are still long queues. Many stations do not have the product. So at this moment, people are confused. They don't even know what is the real situation. But I can tell you authoritatively that as we speak, the NNPC is trying to speak to some members of the media, maybe to explain the current situation on ground. That was slated for 12 o'clock today. We are hoping that they will come out with an argument that Nigerians will have some sort of understanding over the current realities.
Residents of Umuahia are going through tough times buying petrol at high cost. The independent marketers are dispensing petrol to consumers at 900 naira per litre, while the NNPC stations sell at 595 naira per litre. Now, queues are now a regular feature at these government stations, whether they are selling or not. Let's cross over live to Abia State, where we have our correspondent, Chinwe Ugele. Chinwe, good afternoon. Glad to have you join me on the news. Just bring us up to speed. What's happening where you are?
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me. What's happening in Umuahia is that, as it concerns the fuel situation, is that there is no scarcity. The product is available for the filling stations that have. But then again, the queues have come back to the NNPC stations, be it the mega station or the outlets in the city center. So you see people just queue up, whether they are selling or not. They are hopeful that once they start selling, they could purchase at lower cost. But then the citizens have been exposed to buying petrol at quite an exorbitant rate. So people sell between 890 naira to 920 naira, because someone said she also purchased at 920 naira last week. So it's been fluctuating, but whether the product is cut down here, no. There's the product, there's availability of the product, but then it depends on how fast you want to purchase yours. Then you go to where they're selling at a higher cost, or if you are not in a hurry, if you don't have anything, because people even leave their cars on the queues, for long hours. So if you don't have anywhere going, you could afford to spend long hours on the queues to wait to purchase petrol.
Well, Chinwe, I hear you when you say that the PMS is available there in Abia State, but then are there fears that this might just spiral into scarcity of petrol?
Yeah, it's a possibility, so because there's also the fear of artificial scarcity, marketers hoarding their products, because sometimes you can't just explain why some stations are not selling. So, and, they could not sell today. And then, they didn't also unload any product. And then the next day they begin to sell. So the fear that people express here is the artificial scarcity, which they may just present. And if that happens, no one knows, how long it's going to take to be corrected. But the situation is really getting harder by the day, because people are not really finding it funny anymore. And the worst of what makes it more difficult is that people don't understand what is actually going on. So they don't know why they are purchasing petrol at different rates at different times in different petrol stations.
Well, thank you so much for that update, Chinwe Ugele. We do hope things abate as soon as possible. Many thanks once again, Chinwe.
Thank you.
And let's tell you that the Northeast Development Commission has pledged to reconstruct the collapsed Waga-Maidagale Bridge in Adamawa State, which links Adamawa with Borno State. News Central Sumaru Kerawa reports that the bridge was recently destroyed by flood in the area, which cut off any form of socioeconomic activities between the two states through the route. Managing Director of NEC, Mohammed Goni Alkali, who paid a visit to the area on a assessment tour, expressed concern about the collapsed bridge and said everything possible will be done to reconstruct the bridge and restore means of livelihood of the people. The visit follows a presidential directive to the Commission to undertake immediate assessment and proffer solution to ease difficulties of commuters. Similarly, residents of Nasarawa State and other travelers from the north-central and northeastern parts of Nigeria have been denied access to the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, by floods caused by early morning downpour. News Central's correspondent reports that a flood covered the Abuja-Kefi Expressway around the popular Yanya Bridge. Commuters were forced to park their cars and wait for the water current to reduce. Let's also tell you that no fewer than 28 people have been confirmed dead and over 6,000 families have been displaced due to severe flooding in Jigawa State. This information was provided by the Executive Secretary of the State Emergency Management Agency, SEMA, Dr. Haruna Mairiga. The flooding has disrupted official activities, with local government secretariats becoming inaccessible. The Executive Secretary revealed that the flood has displaced over 6,000 families across 13 affected local government areas. The state government established more than 20 internally displaced persons camps, while some victims are staying with relatives. Earlier, the Executive Secretary, Yobe State Emergency Management Agency, SEMA, Dr. Guje Mohammed, spoke to us on this issue.
The flood reports early, alerts early, but then there are challenges in compliance. Most of the challenges we have is compliance. People have a lot of cultural and some religious and issues that has to do with their locations of origin. When you ask them to relocate, when you ask them to go to upperland areas, there's some reluctance. So I think going into the future, there should be compliance issues. There should be legislation. Government and security personnel should ensure that when there is an alert, people are made possible to relocate, because the consequences and the impact that will come after denying to relocate or move to a safer place is worse than when you agree at the early stage. You can see people that up initio are supposed to leave the place, will have saved their lives and their properties, but now they are in flood, and we are trying to see how we can respond and to.
And to speak more on the issues bothering around flooding is Dr. Tokpe Olatunde Ayedun, environment expert and lecturer at Confluence University of Science and Technology in Kogi State, Nigeria. Good afternoon. Glad to have you join me.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
All right, the pleasure is all mine. I kick off by asking you, what are the key drivers behind the recent rise in the frequency and, of course, intensity of floods in northern region of Nigeria?
Yes, thank you. And thank you all for the privilege to speak again in your great TV. I'd like to say that one of the major reasons for flood is climate change. The climate change is upon us, which is the alteration of global atmospheric weather condition of a place, and it has been exacerbated by human activities. The activities such as deforestation, bush burning has exacerbated the climate change, which results in changing our weather pattern. Our rainfall pattern has changed, and that's why we are having more heavy rainfall, unlike in the 19th centuries or the 20th century. Now it is more heavier than all those times, and it's as a result of climate change that is upon us.
Well, I know you talked about climate change, but then do we have flood warning systems in place? And if yes, how well have they served in alerting us in these areas affected?
Yes, we actually have flood warning system in place, like the hydrological agency. I know we have them in place that actually, but they are not serving as the hot tool. Most of the time, the time frame that they give is limited compared to if it is a bit longer but they are actually trying, but it's not adequate enough. But we need to improve. There is room for improvement. Thereby, people need to be aware often that while building on pathways where rivers are supposed to be, it's actually going to come back to them, whereby affecting their lives. Most of the houses built or most of the drainages even constructed is either the houses built are in the riverine areas, whereby they are flood-prone areas, or even the drainages that we are constructing are a bit too narrow. All these are extreme reasons why it is looking as if the agencies who are in charge of creating awareness are not doing enough. But I think they can do much more.
Okay, let me follow up on something you touched on, which is quite interesting. You talked about, disruption in floodplains, people building on flood, paths, as well as drainages being too narrow. What would you prefer as solutions to mitigate these challenges?
I think one of the major ways to mitigate these challenges is for our government to be more proactive. We need government to be more proactive in the sense that it is not an individual thing alone. Though the individual has a way of doing their own thing, maybe gathering the communities and neighbors together to clear the drainages and all that. But the government needs to finance the environment. I realize that when it comes to health, when it comes to outbreak like cholera and other viruses, the governments are more proactive. But when it comes to the environment, because I don't know for certain reasons, the governments are not as proactive as they should. So I feel that there should be climate finance in this sector, in the environment sector, whereby there will be more money that will be used for preparedness. For flood preparedness is very essential, and it requires money. Money must be put in place in order for all these things to go as usual. For instance, if you are talking about having a broader drainage, you don't expect just the community dwellers or an individual person to do that. The government have to be the one to help us to do that, broaden our drainages so that it can be sustainable for other future use. Because now we are talking of a population of over 200 million, and we have a drainage as narrow as very slim. whereby the flood that we are talking about is massive flood. So we should look at the rate of the disaster, as well as when we are trying to plan towards a dynamic rate that you are trying to solve a problem, a big problem, and not solving a child's play problem. So that's why I feel that all those things must be put in place, especially, and again, I feel urban planning too need to sit up. There should be no corruption in urban planning. I may be wrong, but I feel that they are not working as they should. Whereby there are flood-prone areas, there are already ways in which we experts we know the flood-prone areas, with the high terrain and the lower terrain. And
that's a fine place to wrap up. Apologies for butting in. We're pressed for time. I wish we had more time. Thank you so much for your insight. Okay. Dr. Tokpe Olatunde Ayedun, environment expert and lecturer. Many thanks indeed. Nigeria joins the rest of the world today to celebrate the World Humanitarian Day, a global event commemorated annually to acknowledge the work and risks faced by humanitarian workers worldwide. The TISA data is set aside to also honor those workers who were injured or killed while discharging humanitarian duties. World Humanitarian Day was designated by the United Nations Assembly in 2008 to coincide with the anniversary of the 2003 bombing of the United Nations headquarters in Baghdad, Iraq. This year's theme is Act for Humanity, with emphasis on the collective action needed to protect humanitarian workers that are attacked while providing critical assistance to vulnerable populations. Earlier, UNICEF Chief of Maiduguri Field Officer, Dr. Tusha Rain, joined us on the news to discuss this.
The World Humanitarian Day is commemorated every year to recognize humanitarians who do their utmost to support vulnerable populations across the globe. It is a day basically to recommit to humanitarian causes and advocate for a better operating environment, and for not only humanitarian workers but also the people they serve. From Gaza to Sudan to Democratic Republic of Congo, Myanmar, Ukraine and Northeast Nigeria, the world is witnessing a widespread failure to protect humanitarian workers, providing aid and protection to these children. It is past time for world leaders to recommit to the protection of the humanitarian worker, risking their lives to save and protect the civilians in war, including the children. The world is failing humanitarian workers and the children who rely on them heavily for survival and protection.
Okay, so
Humanitarian Day.
You're watching News Central now. Let's take a short break. Stay with us. Thank you for staying tuned. A former senator who represented Adamawa North Senatorial District, Ishaku Abo, has claimed that the monthly earnings of senators are only big on paper and not enough for the demands and challenges of their office. Abo, during an interview, said his salary and allowances while serving as a senator totaled 14.4 million naira, while today senators earn up to 29 million naira. According to Abo, he became poorer after quitting his business to become a senator. The remuneration of Nigerian lawmakers has long been a contentious issue, sparking debates across the country and beyond. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo recently chided the federal lawmakers for fixing their salaries and emolument, and the Senate, however, refuted the claims by Obasanjo, stating that they were lies. Meanwhile, the SocioEconomic Rights and Accountability Project has urged the Senate President Godswill Akpabio and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas, to disclose the exact amount of monthly running costs allotted to members of the National Assembly. Now, Sarah requested the spending details of any of such running costs as well. This information was made known in a statement dated August 17, 2024, and signed by Deputy Director of SERAP, Kolawole Oluwadare. The group's demand is coming on the heels of the recent controversies surrounding the salary of senators. A former senator representing Kaduna Central, Senator Shehu Sani, states that senators receive over 13 million naira monthly, but the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission faulted his claim. And to unpack this, we are joined by Deputy Director of the SocioEconomic Rights and Accountability Project, and that's Kolawole Oluwadare. Good afternoon. It's good to have you join me on the news.
Good afternoon.
All right, let me kick off by asking, what impact do you think the calls for transparency regarding the National Assembly's running costs will have on public trust in government institutions?
Thank you very much. So it is less about the call in terms of advocacy by various citizens groups, including SERA. It is more about the National Assembly will react to these public advocacy by being transparent and accountable, and by ensuring that the National Assembly follows the due process of the law and stops the breach of in the payment of whether it's whatever you might, running costs, salaries, allowances to itself, and to ensure that such payments are made known to every Nigerian.
Okay, just to touch upon what you said, you talked about the National Assembly following the due process of the law. Could you expatiate?
Thank you. So this issue of payment of salaries, or what a senator or a member of the House of Rep takes home, is not new, as you rightly pointed out. But what the National Assembly is doing in breaching constitutional provisions and the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission Act is to pay to itself, call it whatever name, running costs, is to breach the provision of these laws. A case in point is Section 84 of the Constitution that empowers the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission to fix and determine remuneration, salaries, and allowances of members of the House of Assembly. And that is also repeated in the third schedule of the Constitution. So if members of the National Assembly say that what they are paying to themselves is running costs also not an allowance that can be situated under the three words that have been used in the Constitution. And the Revenue Mobilization and Allocation Fiscal Commission has clearly said that it didn't recommend 12 million, 13 million, or 21 million. The commission did not provide for that. But the malfeasance had happened from when the budgetary allocation to the National Assembly was done by strategic transfer every year. Those funds are transferred en bloc as strategic transfer to the National Assembly through the National Assembly Services Commission. And that is what provides an avenue for payment of these running costs. Again, running costs falls clearly under allowances, salaries, or remuneration. The use of running costs is just semantics to confuse. The fact remains, the National Assembly is paying to its members more than what is recommended by the Revenue Mobilization and Allocation Fiscal Commission. So that transparency starts from the budgetary process and allocation to the National Assembly. And Nigerians have a breakdown of what amounts to the total budget of the National Assembly per year, how much of that is recurrent expenditure, how much of that is capital expenditure. And it is clearly under that recurrent expenditure that you find the amount that comprises the take-home of the senator. But that amount is not known to the public. So the allocations to the National Assembly from the national budget is by strategic transfer. All we know is the lump figure that is paid. We do not know the breakdown. And that is what allows for payments of such big amounts as 21 million, 13 million to each senator under the guise of running costs or allowances, whatever name so called.
Okay, now talking about running costs, how do you perceive the claim made by Senator Shehu, regarding 13 million naira monthly salary? How do you think that affects credibility of the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and also Fiscal Commission?
I don't think that impacts on the integrity of the Revenue and Mobilization and Fiscal Commission. I don't think so. And like I've explained, it is the National Assembly that is breaking the law in this instance. The Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission, that we call the Commission, has done its part by fixing the remuneration of public officers, including the President and the Vice President and members of the National Assembly, in fulfillment of the law. But what the National Assembly is doing is paying itself, which is wrong in the first place, paying itself in excess of what the Commission has recommended. There is no way we can blame the Revenue Mobilization and Allocation and Fiscal Commission for that malfeasance. It is squarely within the power of the National Assembly. And I've explained how that is done. The Revenue Mobilization has they have control over the allocation of the budget. That is also what the National Assembly does. So it makes that every budgetary cycle, the National Assembly carves out a portion of the national budget for itself by statutory transfer without a breakdown of what is recurrent expenditure, under which the remuneration allowances will come, and what is concurrent expenditure. And that is why they are able to pay in excess of what the commission has allocated for them. And this has little or nothing to do with the commission. It is clearly a malfeasance on the part of the National Assembly.
Disclose the details requested. What would it mean for their integrity or, perception of, to Nigerians?
I think that is why it's important that Nigerians ask this question and perhaps go a step further. For each Nigerian that belongs to the constituencies of the members of the National Assembly to ask these questions individually for those who are representing them in the National Assembly. Every member of the Senate, every member of the House of Representatives represents a constituency in Nigeria that is made up of people, male and female. The context of this conversation, and perhaps this advocacy, is for Nigerians to own this advocacy and ask those questions from these members of the National Assembly. How much are they earning? Why? Is it justifiable? And I think that is what will bring an end to these, what are termed malfeasance in governance. I think that is the way to go, and that should be the bigger picture. Some sort of critical mass that allows citizens to own this advocacy and to ensure that this practice is stopped.
Dari, Deputy Director, SocioEconomic Rights and Accountability Project. Many thanks indeed.
Thank you very much.
And now to the controversy surrounding a failed contract awarded by the Ogun State government to a Chinese firm, which has once again cast a rather negative spotlight on Nigeria. Now this time, Professor of Political Economy, Pat Utomi, has alleged that former governor of Ogun State, Ibukunle Amosun, violated a contract he entered with his government. Utomi made a statement in response to Amosun's admission that he had cancelled an agreement with Zhongshan Fusheng Industrial Investment Co. Limited, a Chinese company. He said that the company had fake documents and called them imposters. Meanwhile, former governor of Ogun State, Senator Ibukunle Amosun, has described the renowned professor of political economy, Pat Utomi, as an enemy of the state. Amosun stated this while responding to a post on X where Utomi alleged that Amosun did not honor an agreement preceding his administration. The former governor of Ogun State also hinted that the State House of Assembly had already declared Utomi persona non grata. Earlier, we were joined by Nigerian economist Professor Pat Utomi to talk about this.
Instead of starting from upstream, and I went downstream, or the other way around, so to speak. And I began to try to develop the more expensive, the more problematic integrated produce city, where you're supposed to aggregate crops from farmers from, say, several states, and then create a commodities exchange. As a result of the commodities exchange, you will then supply these kinds of outlets. It would have been easier if we had taken off with this and begun to make income from this and then invested into the supply chain. But they prevented us from doing that, frustrated our foreign partners, and they left. So the cost to me, literally, is billions of naira.
In the same vein, Ogun State Governor Dapo Abiodun has reached out to the federal government in a move to resolve the disputes with the Zhongshan Fusheng Industrial Investment Co. about the controversial Ogun Free Trade Zone. Abiodun allegedly consulted top federal officials as political economist. Pat Utomi accused former governor of Ogun State, Ibukunle Amosun, of revoking his property deal with the state government. Several Ogun State officials who confirmed the development on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak on the matter, said Abiodun went to engage the federal government officials about the seizure of the presidential jets. And to a rather sad one, the chairman of the All Progressives Congress in Oyo State, Isaac Omodewo, has died in the United States of America. According to reports, Omodewo left Nigeria in November 2023 for a medical trip. However, he succumbed to death after close to a year receiving treatment for an undisclosed ailment in the USA, where he was a citizen. The State Publicity Secretary, Olawale Sadere, confirmed the development, saying he died in the early hours of Monday. Health professionals are sounding the alarm over the widespread use of non-stick pans in modern kitchens. The convenience of these pans comes with a hidden cost, as a synthetic chemical coating, Teflon, has been linked to a growing list of health concerns, including Teflon Flu. As the popularity of non-stick cookware continues to grow, experts warn the risks associated with its use can no longer be ignored, prompting an urgent call to action to raise awareness and promote safer cooking practices. News Central's Jigawa State has details.
It was first a growing trend in the modern kitchen, which makes the cooking experience easy and fun. Non-stick cookwares, as they are called, are often coated with a material called polytetrafluoroethylene, PTFE, commonly known as Teflon. This is a synthetic chemical made up of carbon and fluorine atoms, which reduces the ability of foods to stick to the pans while cooking. While this aesthetically pleasing cookware makes cooking easy, health professionals and lifestyle nutritionists say this might be causing Teflon flu, hormonal imbalances, and infertility in women.
The relationship between non-stick pan and hormonal imbalance is that studies have shown that it causes infertility, fetal development, and thyroid disease in women, and it also disrupts testosterone levels in men. But please note that it has not been proven scientifically.
According to experts, non-stick pans are expected to be used on a very low heat. It is also advised that these pans are not to be used with metal utensils or hard sponges to avoid scratches, which cause the transmission of the Teflon flu.
Cooking with non-stick pans and pots, they are generally safe, especially when they are used to cook in low temperature and when the type of non-stick cookware used does not contain the chemical compound PFOA. But for pans and pots that contains this chemical compound PFOA, there are risks for potential concerns, such as the risk of inhalation, chemical exposure, and even the degradation of the surface, especially when they are used to cook under temperature above 260 degrees Celsius or 500 degrees Fahrenheit. So when they are used to cook under low temperature, or when the type of non-stick pan does not contain this PFOA, it is safe to use non-stick cookwares for cooking.
While there has been no recorded cases of Teflon flu in Nigeria just yet, the influx of these non-stick pans in the market, and especially the recent trends among food bloggers, have raised possible fears. There is a need to raise awareness and increase testing for early diagnosis and treatment. The U.S. has since recorded more than 200 cases since its outbreak. In Lagos for News Central, Jigawa State.
Stakeholders in Nigeria's federal capital have expressed diverse views on the recent approval of a 300% pay rise for judiciary officers in the country. Now, while some view the move as an effort to reduce corruption and combat the inducement of judges, others believe more alternate measures like the employment of more judges should be utilized to improve the nation's justice sector. News Central's Emmanuel Bagudo has details.
With thousands of high-profile cases in Nigerian courts, the need for judicial officers to display and maintain a high level of integrity has never been more apt. While unproven rumors abound of many judges being compromised by Nigeria's political elite, there has been a nationwide call for judges to maintain a high standard of integrity and shun corruption. The move by Nigeria's Senate to increase the salaries of judicial officers by 300% is seen as a move to make judges foolproof against graft in the light of recent allegations against judges by the National Judicial Council.
Having a 300% increase in salaries and emolument is a welcome development. It could help those who want to be upright amongst them to live upright because they now have more resources to live a decent life.
It's a very huge hurdle to cross when you have a legal case in Nigeria. We know that we don't have enough judges. The court systems are inundated with the sheer volume of petitions and cases. So will these increases translate into a smoother operations for the judiciary?
Go a long way in strengthening the judiciary to be able to perform adequately. So I think it is a commendable legislation.
Citizens are supposed to be happy that the judiciary, the protector of the common man, their welfare package has been improved. It is supposed to be something that was supposed to be joyous to all of the populace. But it is accepted now with mixed feelings.
Some citizens believe that the 300% pay rise will contribute to bringing sanity to the nation's justice sector.
The tendency or the temptation to be induced is directly linked to poor remuneration. So when you have them being adequately remunerated now, it's a kind of a brick wall against such temptations.
The judiciary, let's not forget, is an important component of democracy. And no matter how we look at it, it's an important component of democracy. But this is the time for the judiciary to fight for its own relevance.
With citizens divided on the need to increase salaries of judicial workers, the conduct of judicial officers will now be judged more thoroughly. In Abuja, for News Central, I am Emmanuel Bagudu.
The Asagba in Council has announced Professor of Law Epiphany Azinge as the 14th Asagba of Asaba designate. The Ochendo Ahaba Anthony Edozie, who announced these after a solemn democratic selection process, said it was in line with the traditional rulers and chief edicts of 1979 applicable to Delta State. Youth Central's correspondent Austin Hazel tells us more.
In line with the traditions of the people of Asaba, the palace of the Asagba of Asaba was filled with the obis and other chiefs to select and announce the new Asagba. This gathering is coming months after the final rites of the late Asagba, Professor Chike Edozie. Meanwhile, 10 candidates are vying for the position of the Asagba, all from the Bomata quarters, whose turn is to produce the next Asagba.
The Asagba Council has mandated the various quarters to go into a closed-door session to decide the next Asagba that will officially be announced by the Asagba Council.
At the return of the 5 villages that made up Bomata quarters, the Ochendo Ahaba Anthony Edozie, however, announced Professor Epiphany Azinge as the 14th Asagba designate.
By the authority vested in me as the Ochendo Asaba and the authority vested in me under the traditional rulers and chiefs edict of 1979, I pronounce Professor Epiphany Azinge as the 14th Asagba of Asaba designate.
Some described the process as peaceful and transparent, just as others described the Asagba designate as a national asset to the people of Asaba and beyond.
Everybody knows that he's actually the best of all. So it's just, it's good for the competition because when there's no contest, I don't think there will be respect for the office.
Well, let me state something. I am the 14th Omu of Asaba, and today the designate is the 14th Asagba of Asaba. It is highly spiritual for me. I'm taking it very personal because I'm experiencing this for the first time. And in the Bible, 14 has 2 digits. What does it mean? Forget the old and move to the new.
But I have every confidence that we have made the right choice and that Professor Obi Epiphany Azinge will give Asaba as good and even a better service because he's a younger man than our late revered Asagba. He will give Asaba a very, very good service. And we look forward to his tenure with much enthusiasm.
The Asagba designate will now proceed on rites that will accumulate into his coronation as the 14th Asagba of Asaba. In Asaba, for News Central, Austin Azul.
Coming up, Kenya plans to reinstate some taxes to raise $1.2 billion. We have details shortly. join us again. Thank you for staying tuned. The news continues in West Africa, where Ghana's ruling New Patriotic Party has launched its manifesto in Takoradi as the party gears up for a fierce battle in December's politically charged elections. Now, the party's presidential candidate, Vice President Muhammadu Bawumia, unveiled the documents, which places a strong emphasis on job creation and economic development. The event drew a significant crowd, including high-ranking party officials, members of diplomatic corps, and President Nana Akufo-Addo, who is set to step down after serving the maximum 2 terms in office. But the young people making up a significant portion of the electorate, the NPP is aiming to appeal to young voters by promising more opportunities and a brighter future.
Where we apply digital technology, STEM, robotics, and artificial intelligence for the transformation of agriculture, healthcare, education, manufacturing, fintech, and public services delivery.
Let's get our numbers and win together, for we are not better in every aspect of the economy than any government in the Fourth Republic. God bless you. God bless us all. God bless our whole Ghana.
When I head to East Africa, where the Kenyan government plans to raise about $1.2 billion by reinstating some unpopular taxes contained in a finance bill that was scrapped in the face of deadly street protest. According to Finance Minister John Mbadi, the government was considering about 49 tax measures to try to raise roughly 150 billion shillings, about $1.2 billion. Now, these include the introduction of an eco-levy on goods such as electronic items as well as plastic packaging that the government says is aimed at reducing waste. President William Ruto had warned of a funding shortfall after he decided in June to drop the controversial tax hikes after a bloody day in Nairobi that saw the storming of Parliament and police firing live bullets on demonstrators. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, recently became embroiled in controversy due to allegations that it owes international oil traders an astonishing $6.8 billion and has not deposited funds into the Federation account since January. In response to these allegations, NNPCL's Chief Corporate Communications Officer, Olufemi Shoneye, released a statement firmly rejecting the claims. He points out that the oil trading typically involves credit transactions, which can result in outstanding balances, but assured that NNPCL is meeting its financial responsibility. Now, during an appearance on the Business Edge show, Femi Oladeyin, senior partner at Ajaka Capital Limited, expressed his views on the lack of implementation on regulations governing NNPCL, which he believes is necessary for ensuring transparency with the public.
Easy answer to that. The reality is that the Nigerian government and NNPC are usually scared of that level of transparency for whatever reasons. And I'm not going to postulate as to why that is the reason. I believe that, it's the Singaporean Prime Minister that once said that I would never disclose my reserves, because if I did disclose my reserves, then it tells you that you know what my firepower is. But of course, the IMF and those bodies will tell you, oh, you must disclose your reserves so that we know how much trade you can do. But the reality is that, transparency is important, especially for government. But there is a national interest as well that needs to be protected.
In sports, President of Nigeria Fencing Federation, Adeyinka Samuel, is optimistic that at least 2 Nigerian fencers will qualify for the 2028 Olympic Games in Los Angeles. Now, this would mark Nigeria's debut in Olympic fencing, despite the sport's low popularity in the country. Samuel highlighted the achievement of 16-year-old Nkosi Ibro, the first Nigerian selected for the All-American Fencing First Team national champion Somto Eri Bene, and recent scholarship graduate Okonlawon Wisdom and Shobayo Temilade. Nigeria, a leading fencing nation in sub-Saharan Africa, will host the Under-21 EP World Cup in December at the 2026 Fencing Commonwealth Games. The federation plans to boost coach and official training to support athlete growth. And that's all on the news. Let's take a look again at some of the major stories. Supreme Court of Nigeria reserves judgment on Kogi election disputes. Nigeria's ex-lawmaker says senators' 29 million naira earning not a lot of money. Kenya plans to reinstate some taxes to raise $1.2 billion. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen and do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Adebola Adedugba.